Hello friends, welcome to the Point. In today's session, let's discuss about Northern Empire. This Northern Empire, it was the age of three empires from 800 to 1000 AD. A number of powerful empires that arose in North India and the Deccan between 750 and 1000 AD. And this were first the Pala Empire. So this Pala Empire, it dominated eastern India till the middle of 9th century. Next comes Pratihara Empire. So Pratihara Empire, it dominated western India and upper Gangetic Valley till the middle of 10th century. And then the Rashtrakuta Empire, it dominated the Deccan and it also controlled territories in North and South India at various times. So these three empires, they fought among themselves and they provided stable conditions of life over large areas that extended agricultural, they built ponds and canals, and they gave patronage to arts and letters including temples. And among the three, Rashtrakuta Empire, it lasted the longest and it was only the most powerful empire of the time. But it also acted as a bridge between North and South India in economic as well as in cultural matters. So here came the struggle for domination in North India in between the Palas, Pratiharas and the Rashtrakutas. The Palas. Following the reign of Harsha, Kannauj was considered the symbol of sovereignty of North India, a position which Delhi was to acquire later. The control of Kannauj, it also implied control of the upper Gangetic Valley and its rich resource in trade and agriculture. So in addition to this, the Palas and the Pratiharas, they clashed with each other for the control of the area that extends from Banaras to South Bihar. So which again had rich resource and well developed tradition. And the Pratiharas, they clashed with Rashtrakutas also. The Pala Empire, it was founded by Gopala and this was probably in 750 AD when he was elected as a king by the notable men of the area to end the anarchy that was prevailing there. And later on, Gopala, he was succeeded by his son Dharmapala, and Dharmapala ruled till 810 AD. And Dharmapala, he was defeated by the Rashtrakuta ruler Dhruva. But after this signal victories, Dhruva returned to the Deccan, leaving the field free to Dharmapala, who occupied Kannauj and held a grand darbar there, which was attended by vassal rulers from Punjab, eastern Rajasthan and so on. But he could not consolidate his control over Kannauj. The Pratihara power, it was revived under Nagabhatha II, and Dharmapala fell back but was defeated near Mongir. The failures in the north, it compelled the Pala rulers to turn their energies in other direction. Devapala, the son of Dharmapala, he succeeded to the throne in 810 AD and he ruled for about 40 years and he extended his control over Pragjotishpur, which is in Assam and it was also a part of modern Nepal and was also brought under Pala suzerainty. And therefore for about 100 years from the middle of 8th to middle of 9th century, the Pala rulers, they dominated eastern India. The Palas had close trade contacts and cultural links with Southeast Asia. The trade with Southeast Asia, it was very profitable and it added greatly to the prosperity of Pala Empire, and it led to the incursion of gold and silver from these countries into Bengal. So the powerful Sailendra dynasty, which was a Buddhist in faith and which ruled over Malaya, Java, Sumatra and the neighboring islands, it sent many embassies to Pala court and it sought permission to build a monastery at Nalanda, and it also requested the Pala ruler Devapala to endow 5 villages for its upkeep. The request was granted and bears testimony to the close relations between the two empires. The Pratiharas. The Pratiharas, they are also called as Gurjara Pratiharas. So this name Gurjara Pratiharas, it may be originated from Gujarata or southwestern Rajasthan. They gained prominence on account of their resistance to Arab incursions from Sindh into Rajasthan. And the Arabs were decisively defeated by Chalukya rulers of Gujarat in 738 AD, and they ceased to be a real danger. The efforts of the early Pratihara rulers to extend their control over Upper Ganga Valley and Malwa region, it were defeated by Rashtrakuta rulers Dhruva and Gopala III. In 790 and again in 806 to 807, the Rashtrakutas were defeated by the Pratiharas and then withdrew to the Deccan, leaving the field free for the Palas. The main interest of the Rashtrakutas, it was the domination of Malwa and Gujarat. The real founder of Pratihara Empire was Bhoja. He built the empire and by about 836 AD, he had recovered Kannauj, which remained the capital of the Pratihara Empire for almost a century. Bhoja, he tried to extend his sway in the east, but he was defeated and checkmated by the Pala ruler called Devapala. He then turned towards central India and the Deccan Gujarat. This led to a revival of the struggle with Rashtrakutas. So, in a sanguinary battle on the bank of river Narmada, Bhoja was able to retain his control over considerable parts of Malwa and some parts of Gujarat, but he could not progress further in the Deccan. Therefore, he turned his attention to the north once again. The name of Bhoja is famous in legends. The adventures of Bhoja in early part of his life, his gradual reconquest of his lost empire and his final recovery of Kannauj, it struck the imagination of his contemporaries. Bhoja was a devotee of Vishnu and he adopted the title Adi Varaha, which has been found inscribed in some of his coins. And he is sometimes called Mihir Bhoja. This is to distinguish him from Bhoja Paramara of Ujjain, who ruled a little later. Bhoja was succeeded by his son Mahendrapala I. Mahendrapala I, he maintained the empire of Bhoja and extended it over Magadha and North Bengal. His inscriptions have also been found in Kathiawar, East Punjab and Awadh. Mahendrapala fought a battle with the king of Kashmir, but he had to yield to him some of the territories in Punjab won by Bhoja. The Pratiharas therefore dominated North India for about 100 years, from the first quarter of 9th to middle of 10th century. Al-Masudi, he calls Gurjara Pratiharas as Al-Zuzar, which means a corrupt form of Gurjara. And the king Baura, probably a mispronunciation of Adi Vridha, the title used for Bhoja. Almudi says that the empire of Zuzar had 18 lakh villages, cities and rural areas, and it was about 2000 km in length and 2000 km in breadth. The king's army had 4 divisions, each consisting of 7 lakh to 9 lakh men. With the army of North, he fights against the ruler of Multan and other Muslims who aligned themselves with him. The Pratiharas were patrons of learning and literature. The great Sanskrit poet and dramatist called Rajashekhar, he lived at the court of Mahipala, who was a grandson of Bhoja. The Pratiharas, they also embellished Kannauj with many fine buildings and temples. Many Indian scholars went with ambassadors to the court of the Caliph at Baghdad, and these scholars, they introduced Indian sciences, especially mathematics, algebra and medicine to the Arab world. Rashtrakutas ruled from 755 to 975 AD. The Rashtrakutas, they were of Kannada origin and Kannada language was their mother tongue. Danti Durga was the founder of Rashtrakuta dynasty. He defeated the Gurjaras and he captured Malwa from them. Then he annexed the Chalukya kingdom by defeating Kirtivarman II, and therefore the Rashtrakutas became a paramount power in Deccan. His successors were Krishna I, and he was also a great conqueror. He defeated the Gangas and the eastern Chalukyas of Vengi. He built the magnificent rock-cut monolithic Kailasa temple at Ellora. The next important king of this dynasty was Govinda III. He achieved victories over North Indian kingdoms, and his successor, Govinda III's successor, was Amogavarsha I, and he ruled from 1815 to 880 AD. And he ruled for a long period of about 64 years. He had lost control over Malwa and Gangavadi, and his reign was popular for the cultural development. He was a follower of Jainism. Jinasena, he was the chief preceptor. He was also a patron of letters. And Amogavarsha I, he wrote the famous Kannada work called Kaviraja Marga. He had also built the Rashtrakutas' capital, the city of Malkhed and Manyakeda. Among the successors of Amogavarsha, Krishna III, he was famous for his expeditions, and he marched against the Cholas and he defeated them at Takkolam. He marched further south and he captured Tanjavur. He went till far and reached Rameshwaram and occupied it for some time. He built several temples in the conquered territories, including the Krishneshwara temple at Rameshwaram. Throughout his reign, he possessed the Tondai Mandalam region, including the capital Kanchi, and after his death, the power of Rashtrakutas declined. Political ideas and organization. The system of administration in this empires, it was based on the ideas and practices of Gupta Empire, Harsha's kingdom, and the Chalukyas in the Deccan. So as before, the monarch was center of all affairs. The monarch was the head of the administration as well as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Vassal rulers and autonomous chiefs, they often limited the area of the direct administration of the king. The kings adopted high-sounding titles such as Maharajadiraja, Parambhatkara and so on, and they claimed to be the Chakravartin or supreme of Indian rulers. The king's position, it was hereditary in nature. The rules about succession, it were not rigidly fixed. The eldest son often succeeded, but there are many instances when the eldest son had to fight his younger brothers and sometimes lost to them. Sometimes rulers designate the eldest son or another favorite son as their Yuvaraja or successor. In that case, the Yuvaraja stayed at the capital and helped in the task of administration. Younger sons were sometimes appointed as provincial governors. Kings were generally advised by number of ministers, and those ministers were chosen by the king itself, generally from a leading families, and their position was also hereditary. So in case of Pala kings, we hear that a Brahmana family supplied 4 successive chief ministers to Dharmapala and his successors. It appears that in almost every kingdom there was a minister of correspondence, which included foreign affairs, a revenue minister, a treasurer, chief of armed forces called as Senapati, chief justice and Purohita. All the ministers except the Purohita were expected to lead military campaigns as well when called upon to do so. So we also hear of officials of the royal households at Anantapur, since the king was fountainhead of all the power, and some of the officers of household became very powerful. So this is all about the age of 3 empires in northern India. See you all in the next session with some other interesting topic. Thank you.